I showed you the other day how Scotland's chief medical officer lost her job for sneaking off to her holiday home while telling everyone else to stay isolated at home. New Zealand's health minister was also caught out, but he kept his job, got a bit of a demotion to the outer ministry instead. Now it's New South Wales' turn. Here's Don Harwin, Arts Minister, Indigenous Affairs Minister and factional powerbroker. Everyone else has been told to stay home, cancel their Easter holidays, but he's been up at his beach house on the New South Wales Central Coast. We're all stuck in our shells while he's at Pearl Beach. The Premier should have sacked him, but just ordered him home like an errant schoolboy.
In these circumstances, and they are very serious circumstances, I don't want to take away from that, and I've apologised on behalf of my team to the entire community, because you can't just keep to the rules. The perception is horrible, and that's why he'll be back in Sydney.
Now, this might get messy yet, though, because it seems Harwin might have had a friend self-isolating at his place after returning from overseas. So has he compromised that important process too? One of the problems here is that Gladys Berejiklian can hardly sack Harwin when she's standing by another minister who presided over the single largest mistake of Australia's pandemic response. Now, make no mistake, as we said at the start, we are doing brilliantly well as a country, but our results would be at least 20 or 30% better if the New South Wales Health Minister, Brad Hazzard, had put the passengers and crew of the Ruby Princess into quarantine last month. It had already produced one COVID-19 case on its previous voyage. Health authorities knew it had sick people on board. One woman went straight to an ambulance and off the ship to hospital where she died from coronavirus. 3 others tested positive the next day, but everyone had already been let off the ship. Many awaiting test results, and they funnelled out through airports and all over the country. So far, we know that at least 11 passengers from the ship have died from COVID-19. Close to 700 people from the ship were infected, and they in turn have infected many others right across the country. But the Health Minister is still in his job, and here's how he explains his response.
What I do know, though, is as Health Minister, I asked when I was told, which was I think the next day or perhaps the day after, I think it was the next day after 3 people had been confirmed as positive, I asked what the strategies were, what the policies were, and what had been done.
So maybe the next day, or perhaps the day after that, he asked what the policies were. He's the minister. It's his job to frame the policies, dictate the policies and enforce the policies. But anyway, he reckons they all did all they could in the circumstances. Unbelievable. People are understandably angry, including in other states other than New South Wales, where the Ruby Princess has generated their largest influx of infections. Adelaide radio host David Penberthy, who also writes for The Australian, and as a former editor of the Daily Telegraph, he knows New South Wales politics well.
This is one of the all-time great stuff-ups that has now been followed by one of the all-time great Australian cover-ups. This police investigation that has been called in by Premier Gladys Berejiklian is nothing more than a transparent backside covering exercise aimed at getting herself and her utterly inept Health Minister Brad Hazzard, who is easily, by the length of the straight, one of the dumbest people I've ever met in politics. He has made an utter hash of this. It was his department that said to the ship, even though the ship's operators said we are genuinely worried that we have sick people on board, it was his own department that said, no, in you come, off you get, and that's how about a third of the spread that has happened in Australia has unfolded. So now they've set up a police investigation into something, the cause of which is already obvious.
Who could disagree with that assessment? This continues to be a shambles. The ship remains docked at Port Kembla, south of Sydney, as medical care is given to 1,000 crew members. Police continue their inquiries and plans are devised to get the crew members home and the ship back to its owners. Yet, when you stand by the minister responsible for this shambles, it's hard to sack a bloke for ducking up to his shack. Perhaps Gladys Berejiklian would do better to dump both of them.